The International Network of Algerian Scientists, INAS, is a nonprofit organization founded in 2016 by Algerian academics and professionals residing in the USA. The motivation is to pay back the homeland and help elevate the level of education in Algeria. INAS's mission is to network Algerian competencies worldwide with counterparts in Algeria. Among its activities, INAS has organized a significant conference that took place outside of Washington, D.C., USA in 2019. The conferees identified several need areas in Algeria and agreed to work on 10 different projects covering areas ranging from education, healthcare, to agriculture and ecotourism, to name a few. The work is ongoing and progressing. INAS is adopting the most contemporary and proven scientific methods to address these issues. INAS's humble beginnings included a few members. Today, it accounts for hundreds of able Algerians from the world over. Their goal is to participate in the rebuilding process of our new Algeria. These able and proud Algerians combine diversity and expertise with benevolence to set a path for a bright future in Algeria. INAS uses a top technology platform to allow members to collaborate and exchange knowledge. As an organization, INAS has different departments that ensure professional support to all its members, projects, and events. We welcome all Algerian competencies worldwide to join us in our noble mission. Algeria is bigger than all of us. Let's stand up and be counted today.
All right, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in another monthly webinar in our project, Earthquake Hazard Mitigation with the International Network of Algerian Scientists. This is Mohamed Amrouche. I am the Geoscience Group Leader. And today we are very honored and pleased to have our February webinar with Professor Dr. Mehdi Zareh from Iran, who is willing to share with us the experience, the Iranian experience with earthquakes with over 30 years experience. Good afternoon, Professor, and thank you very much for having us.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, you and all the Algerian friends, the Zamir Algeria. And I hope that we have a good talk and conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. So I will quickly introduce our panelists today. The presentation title is Learning from Earthquakes in Iran, 30 Years of Experience from the Manjil 1990 earthquakes to the Serapol Zarab earthquake. So Dr. Mehdi Zareh is a full professor of engineering seismology at the International Institute of Earthquake Engineering and Seismology in Iran. He graduated with a geology degree with honor from the Tehran University in 1990. And a master degree from the Tabiat Madras University. He then pursued a PhD in engineering seismology at the Joseph Fourier University Grenoble in France in 1999 and obtained habilitation à diriger des recherches from the University of Strasbourg, France in 2017. So Professor Zareh have supervised several PhD theses and have strong scientific contribution as he authored and co-authored several international research articles in peer-reviewed journals. His expertise involves seismic hazard analysis, strong motion seismology, earthquake risk analysis, and natural disaster risk management. And today, he's kindly going to share with us the Iranian experience with the earthquakes. So, Ustad Zareh, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will try to summarize in some way some significant parts of our experience on Iranian earthquakes and some earthquakes from abroad, other countries that we have studied, mostly neighboring countries. In fact, the experience that I want to speak about is from a region of the world in between the Arabian platform and Eurasia, a part that is consisted of a plateau with two major mountain belts. This plateau is very seismic. uh, especially comparing to the lands in its northern and southern part. The northern part is specifically the Central Asian countries, Caucasian republics, and the southern are Saudi Arabia and the states locating in the southern shoreline of the Persian Gulf. Uh, this land uh, has a rate of shortening of about 30 millimeter per year, and this rate is not distributed um, in a uniform uh, all over the platform. In fact, if we look at the faults and uh, the major structural trends, we see that in the south we have a major uh, deforming very young belt, which is called Zagros Mountain Belt, in which we experience of seismicity, which is almost three-fourths of the seismicity rate of all of the plateau, and the tectonic shortening, which is almost the same. The ratio is about almost two-thirds of the tectonic shortening of all of the plateau. In fact, this region and the earthquakes in this southern part is more frequent, show more frequent earthquakes, but mostly these earthquakes are representative for moderate seismicity, sometimes major earthquakes, but mostly moderate seismicity, and uh, the rest are the small earthquakes, means the magnitude less than 5. Therefore, if we go through the uh, earthquake uh, hazard zoning map of the region, including Iran, we see that this belt is almost the higher seismic area, and toward the southeast, we have the Macron belt, which is the region having the only part of the plateau having the subduction, because the rest of the plateau is experiencing the shallow crustal earthquake. Therefore, most of the seismicity and the damages we experience in Iran relates to the shallow crustal earthquake. And we have some few events, very rare, but there exists the subduction earthquakes in the southeast. This is um, the seismic hazard zoning maps produced in last 5 decades in Iran. Um, a part of these maps have been included in the seismic building code of the country since 1970, 52 years ago. There has been a building code for Iran, and a good experience of seismic hazard zoning almost in these years, I mean 50 years, for which is uh, comprising little by little the new information in the, I mean, newer maps, in more updated maps. These are four examples and four features of earthquake zoning map presented in last four versions of seismic building codes of Iran. The latest one is published in 2018, and you see that in each of these maps there has been some changes in the especially in the zones representing the highest level of seismic hazard, which correspond mostly to the experiences coming from the most recent earthquakes. There has been always a challenge in these maps, which is related mostly to the lack of knowledge on seismotectonics and to the activity rate of major fault zones. And we should insist that even for the fifth version of the Iranian seismic building code, we are still including newer information. Why? Because in 2017, we have experienced a magnitude 7.3 earthquake in Zagros region in a zone that we hadn't experienced before such a magnitude greater than 7 earthquake. It means that the earth crust is still showing us newer and more fresh information which we hadn't know before. Okay, this is a map of Turkey, seismic hazard zoning map of Turkey, and which is the neighboring parts of northwest of Iran is in continuation of the eastern Turkey, and Turkey is the only neighbor of Iran in which there are modern, mostly modern scientific research on seismic hazard and earthquake engineering. The other neighbor, which is almost in the same situation, is Pakistan. Turkey in the northwest and Pakistan in southeast. These two are the two countries which we may share, scientific information, and we have our counterparts in those countries. Unfortunately, in some of parts of Iranian borders, for instance, the border zone with Afghanistan, we have lack of knowledge because, especially in last 44 years, there have been tragic history of war, civil war, and occupation, and and most recently another change in that country, and these stabilities is not useful for completing the knowledge and sharing the knowledge in the border areas. We have a network which is developed in last 32 years, especially after Manzil earthquake of 1990. The network, the seismic network, has been established in 1958, and since 1960, there have been 5 station network in the country, But during the 70s and then in 80s, there have been some additional stations uh, which have improved the network, but especially since 1990 and 1995, the Iranian network has been improved. Actually, we have about 120 uh, stations uh, covering all over the country. And you see here the strong motion network actually having 1140 active stations. Uh, Before 1990, these 1140 have been something around 150 analog stations. But after the Manzil earthquake of 1990, there has been an improvement of more 1,000 stations, which has been covered the country. And in this point of view, we may say that since 1990 until now, about something around 32 years, we have a good coverage of digital accelerometers uh, almost all over the country. Uh, uh, this is the view of our seismogenic sources as of 2020. Um, the updated map and the the seismicity and depth, and you see that most of the events are shallow earthquakes. There are some earthquakes reported for more than 40 kilometers, but most of the events are uh, those uh, having the seismogenic depths of less than 25 kilometers. More than 90% of the events um, are reporting from um, these depths. And this is the geomagnetic field um, result in Iran, showing the major substructures, and it has been started in 1974. These coverage, and this is the gravity field, which may help us to um, subdivide the structural zones in southern Caspian Sea in northern Iran, and especially in Makran zone in southeast of Iran. And the Iran is uh, um, heaven for geologists because it represents a very different zone of geologic units from Precambrian up to Holocene and in almost in all over the country we may find such um, I mean varieties. Um, if we include all of these information, most of them have been updated very recently. We may find some sort of this uh, sophisticated seismogenic sources model for the all over the country, and you see in this map that uh, there are uh, uh, six major subdivisions, structural subdivisions, but in each of these structural zones, there are some more detailed subzones. And even at the time being, I think that we are still looking for more detailed uh, information for better models in the future, especially for the zones where we have the active faults, but there is no seismicity. There is no earthquake history. You know, this is a great challenge. It is a great challenge that in some parts, especially very close to the uh, major cities, we have very important active faults, but you see that in the uh, last uh, 3,000 years, you have almost nothing as a major earthquake. Uh, Therefore, we should assume that we may have uh, probably we may have a seismic gap in that region, in that part. Um, if um, if we go through the details of what we obtained, especially in recent years, uh, from strong motion networking, we may say that this is a very general view of the accelerometric networks. And in Iran, as I have mentioned, it has been started in 1973, but it has been developed after the Manjil earthquake of 1990. And the uh, the major challenge for this strong motion network is now trying to understand the site condition in each of the strong motion stations. Because if you we by the time that we do not have a detailed catalog of each station representing the site conditions and different soil types and information such as shear wave velocities and amplification uh, factors. Uh, Whenever there is a major earthquake, it is very difficult to interpret the frequency content of that record and the spectrum uh, resulted from that record. In very recent years, since 2000, uh, um, 2002 by 2014, a new uh, representation of the strong motion processing uh, for Iranian data earthquakes have been represented in one of my articles in 2016 in Arabian Journal of Earth Sciences. It is published, and but a previous version of such a studies have been published in 2004, and uh, very most recently, a part of Iranian data have been included in the pan-European accelerometric data, which is published in Seismological Research Letters in 2016. And we have been a part of that report, and this is a representation of part of um, that study. Lucia Lucy et al. Article in Seismological Research Letter. It has been published. Um, um, as I have mentioned, uh, when we have newer data, we have, it is very normal that we have uh, a lot of information from a small earthquake and few events having the magnitudes greater than, for instance, 5.5. You see that in a period of 2004 to 2014, we obtained 140 accelerogram corresponding to 9 earthquakes, having magnitudes greater than 5.5. And we, uh, as you may know, that in strong motion studies, we are mostly looking for stronger events for to be recorded in the nearest condition to the active fault zone. But in the reality, all over the world, the challenge is that most of the events, most of the strong motion data are those corresponding to the events having magnitude less than magnitude 5 and recorded for the distances greater than 30 kilometers. Uh, uh, and this challenge is the problem for building codes, because the building codes should be focused on the extreme cases. The extreme cases mean the conditions in the major earthquake and the strong earthquake means the magnitude greater than 7 and the magnitudes between 6 and 7. And the conditions for the distances to the fault less than 30 kilometers. You should decide for such important conditions with the databases which are not representative normally for such conditions. And this is uh, uh, the basic reason to improve the strong motion network with more and more stations, because we do not know where will be the next great earthquake, and if an earthquake occurs, we need the, a lot of records to be obtained around the epicenter. For this case, we should have a lot of stations almost everywhere. In all of the seismic zones, we should improve the network. This is a process of data processing, strong motion data processing for the earthquakes between 2004 and 2014. The site classes 1 correspond to rock conditions. Site class 2 is hard alluvium. Site class 3 representative for soft alluvium or sandy soils, and site class 4 is representative for soft soil conditions, clay site, and the, the conditions for which we expect major amplification. And as you see, the major parameter to distinguish the different site conditions have been the fundamental frequency of each for each record. And the fundamental frequency means the frequency in which you expect the highest amplification. Uh, if it is uh, for greater than 15 hertz, the side condition is rock side, shear wave velocity of greater than 760 meter per second. And if it is between 5 and 15 hertz, you may correspond it to site class 2. Between 2 and 5 hertz, it might be named as site class 3, and less than 2 hertz means uh, long period amplification uh, is site class 4. Uh, and this is the catalog. I will move a little faster. You see some parts of newer studies. This is results that have been published in DSSA, Botanical Technological Society of America, in 2019. A new empirical ground motion model for Iran. It was part of one of my research projects, and one of my previous PhD students have worked on it. If if I want to share the events that we have worked and used the the data, I may mention about the 1999 Izmit earthquake in Turkey that we have been focused and we published a specific report in this major earthquake of Izmit having a magnitude 7.3, and there have been another earthquake in again in 1999, about 3 months later in Düzce with a magnitude 7.2. Both earthquakes have provided a lot of strong motion data, especially some records in the near field, and it is very important for us to look at these records because we wanted to understand the possible condition in the near field if an earthquake occurs in the same condition of Izmit and Düzce earthquake everywhere in this region, what we may expect as the near field condition. A part of data have been obtained from one earthquake of 23 October 2011, magnitude 7.2, more than 10 years ago. It was very close to the frontier of Iran, the one earthquake in Turkey, in extreme eastern part of Turkey. It was an important earthquake having a compressional mechanism. Unfortunately, the data for near field, I mean distances less than 45 kilometers to the fault have not been obtained in this earthquake. More than 500 records have been obtained, but most of, I mean, all of them for the distances greater than 45 kilometers to the epicenter. In the same region, we have we have had the Chalderan Moravia earthquake of 1976, very close to the Iranian Iran-Turkey border line, and it is interesting to say that at the time of this earthquake of 1976, the records have been obtained in Iran, but at that time there has not been still the strong motion stations in Turkey. And the colleagues in Turkey have looked for the records which have obtained in Iran, and it has been shared at that time. Um, um, yeah. Therefore, again in northwest of Iran and eastern Turkey, the major mechanism is compressional and shallow, mostly the shallow earthquakes, and most of the events in this region are representative for the depths of less than 20 kilometers. Uh, this is the record we obtained in Maku, the station of the city of Maku in northwest of Iran, and some other stations. And we have processed the data, and in a um, after visiting um, the epicentral zone, we understood that in the epicentral region, most of the damages and fatalities corresponded to the area where there have been a major site amplification in the city of Argeş, in the coastline of the Van Lake, the Lake of Van, the city which is located in the shoreline of this lake. It has been um, a suitable uh, place for great amplifications. And if you look at the amplifications for the strong motion records, you see that the periods of about zero point 0.4 seconds and 1.5 seconds are something around 1 to 1.5 seconds are representative for higher amplifications. And it may show that the building apartments having the 4 to 6 stories and 10 to 15 stories are suitable to sustain higher shaking level. And it has been the condition in that earthquake, in which a lot of apartment buildings have been demolished because of the amplification. You see actually the spectral response shape of the records obtained in this earthquake, and in most of these records you may see that the long period amplification levels, long period pulses. For instance, in this record, uh, again between zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.8 seconds and 1.5 to 1.8 second period are representative for higher levels of spectral ordinates. And it might be representative for, again, for site amplification. Again, site amplification, as I told you, the city of Ardish is uh, has been the location for most of the victims of this earthquake because of the site amplification. Um, Therefore, uh, as far as most of the development of the cities are towards the locations and towards the areas having more suitable for, in viewpoint of urban development, such as close to the lakes and along the rivers for the this region having a very arid condition and having experiencing a very important drought since at least the last 25 years, you may think that even in the recent years, the most of the development of the cities have been toward the more risky zones, toward the areas which are representative for softer soils, closer to the coastlines and along the rivers, because the people are looking for the water. They look for some area having water to develop the city. But the area which is representative for water might be an area having a condition of high amplification level. Uh, uh, Therefore, having more population installed in the city and around cities, the risky constructions have been improved in the developing countries, such as our country. It is in the positive side, we may say that the consideration of building codes have been improved in the countries such as Iran, Turkey, and maybe Algeria in the recent years. But meanwhile, the population has increased, and installation of the population have been in a lot of cases have been along the faults and on the subsoil conditions. Therefore, the development has a risky or negative side as well. In the positive side, newer buildings with consideration of seismic building codes, but in the negative side, installation of the people in more hazardous conditions, and improving and developing the uh, risky conditions for the cities. Uh, um, if we look at the recent studies on the earthquake, we see that um, the, the new studies have been focused on uh, uh, site conditions and, if possible, the uh, borehole logs of the strong motion stations wherever available, and if it has been performed, uh, study on uh, local networks and the details provided on the local network. Therefore, from 1990 to 2022, we we may observe that even in the developing countries, the quality of inspections on the earthquake, in my point of view, has been changed, and hopefully it is improved, uh, and especially on the uh, strong earthquakes and the events, I mean, corresponding to major magnitude levels, means uh, the magnitude greater than 7. The uh, newer studies incorporate modern investigation on the stronger motions and geophysical inspections and geotechnical information, not only the providing a description of what has happened and where have been the damages. In recent studies, we may um, obtain more quality information. Um, okay, I prefer to stop at this point. I have tried to take a look on mostly in last 30 years, and trying to compare the different information which is coming from older to, I mean, more recent events, and having a view on the future. We may think about uh, the most important, I mean, points that we expect from the lessons learned to be learned from the earthquake in the future. I think that we need more systematic studies on active fault zones, on near field conditions, on site amplifications in viewpoint of earth science studies on, I mean, hazardous areas. Meanwhile, we need more systematic seismic inspection and, I mean, recording more systematic strong ground motion during the earthquake. This is the, possible in the future, and I think that little by little, the countries like our countries are improving their um, network based on the human resources of each of these countries, uh, uh, because the new generation scientists, they look for quality data and modern science. Thank you. I am at your service for any comment or question, and hope that I could represent some view of uh, some of the studies that we have done.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mehdi Zari, for the very interesting and insightful presentation. As you said, little by little, each country is trying to improve their seismic resiliency and seismic building codes. And that's why it's very important to cross-exchange our knowledge. And that's why we are very happy to have you here today. So you've summarized pretty well the seismic risk in Iran, which is, I think, one of the most experienced countries in the world in this matter. And it's very important to study the Iranian experience. So you covered the geology and the the tectonic side of it, and then you discussed about the different hazards that Iran faced and how they improved their resilience. So I would like to remind you that you can ask your questions now. We can start our Q&A session for our live audience. If you have any questions or comments, please post your questions in the comments, and Professor Mehdi Zari will be very happy to answer. I see that Professor Mustafa Moghrawi was here a little bit earlier. So Professor Moghrawi, if you have any comments or questions, please ask them in the comment section, and we can answer them. So let me pick some questions from our audience here. We have a lot of people thanking us for this event. So probably the first questions from Ahmed is, what were the main building codes revision after major earthquakes events in Iran? So how did Iranian building code adapted to each major events? In a few comments.
First of all, I should say salam to all of my Algerian colleagues and my professor, most specifically Professor Meghrawi, we have been in very close contact in recent years, and I am happy that he is in the audience. The question is a very good question. I will focus on the most recent revision of the building code. Actually, we are providing the fifth revision of the seismic building code of Iran. In the newest version, we are trying to include as much as possible the uh, the spectral ordinance specifications about near field kind of earthquake ground motion, and if possible, the uh, the site-specific strong ground motion and corresponding design spectra. The What is the objective? The objective is going to a position that we may ask from every engineer which is working with the building code may ask from the code for a specific location, the spectral ordinance as much as possible, the values which are having less uncertainties, and if possible, because the locations of the cities, most of the cities are corresponding to near field conditions, because most of the cities are constructed in very close to the faults. A major part of the city of Tehran is in near field condition. Therefore, almost in each place in the capital, if an engineer wants to ask from the scientific building code the coordinates of his project and ask the spectral ordinates, you may think that in most of the cases, these coordinates may correspond to the near field conditions, near fault situation. Therefore, our objective is approach to that position, that an engineer may ask from the building code the spectral ordinates for each of the for each of the points. I mean, questioning points for the. I mean, every project, but there is the problem of detailed information first. Second problem is for all of these conditions, for instance, for the city of Tehran, we do not have any major earthquake uh, in order to discuss about real uh, condition of, I mean, a real a strong ground motion, hopefully, because if it was real condition, maybe I didn't exist right now. A major earthquake may kill everybody. But um, this is a challenge. Uh, Therefore, a lot of um, spectral ordinates might be obtained from the models, not from the reality. Still from the models, not from the reality. And another challenge is the earthquakes in the zones. I mean, the level of the earthquake, for instance, the Sarpolozov earthquake of 2017, a magnitude 7.3, in a region that most of the previous studies uh, uh, have represented ground motion, a possible ground motion level of about, I mean,
Hello, I think we have some connection issue with Professor Medizari. Please wait a minute. Hello, Professor, can you hear us? I think we have some connection issue from your side. So please wait a little bit. We have some disconnection, and probably Professor will be back shortly. Hello, can you hear us, Professor? I think we have some disconnection from your side. Um, Hello, welcome back, Professor. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Hello?
Uh, yeah. If
Yeah, it seems we still have some.
may I continue?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Hello?
I think that
Yeah,
I was yeah, I was saying that
yeah, we can.
uh, in the in, yeah in the new building code, uh, the aim is to represent the uh, spectral ordinate for each coordinate, and the challenge is this. Therefore, you know that in one revision, you may not solve all the problems, but you may improve a little bit. This is
Yeah.
the challenge of the fifth version.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your very detailed response. So we will take another questions from Professor Mustafa Moghrawi. He said, thanks to Mehdi. Professor Moghrawi have two questions. The first question is there a national program in Iran for the study of earthquake fault and their potential for generating earthquakes?
Uh, National program, if you
Yes, hello. We can hear you, Professor. Hello. Apologies. So we're still experiencing some internet issues. Probably Professor Mehdi will be back shortly. So we apologize. I think we lost Professor Mehdi Zari from the connection here, as we are facing some connection issues. Yeah, I think we can. If we cannot get Professor Mehdi Zari back, we are going to close this this webinar. Oh, I think he managed to come back. Can you hear us, Professor? Hello. So yeah, we apologize for the technical problem. Unfortunately, we couldn't connect back with Professor Mehdi Zari. So with that said, I would like to thank very much all the audience. We had a lot of acknowledgement messages from the different platforms thanking us for this event. So I would like to thank you for attending this month event, and we would like personally to thank Professor Mehdi Zari for the very insightful presentation. Stay in touch with us. We are going to have other online webinars for next month, and we would like to apologize again for this technical problem, and looking forward to see you all very soon. Thank you very much for attending today's presentation, and see you next month on the next webinar. Thanks.